Hello, a very good morning. It's great to have you with us here on Ireland AM.
It is indeed. It's Tuesday, the 27th of August, and we've got lots coming up on today's show.
We sure do. First up this morning, we are going to be speaking to former Irish soldier and security analyst Declan Power on the latest in the conflicts in the Middle East and the Ukraine.
Yeah, a lot has happened overnight, of course. At 7:45, we're going to be talking to a GP about the clogged up system. So, a lot of GPs have had to stop taking new patients because they no longer have space on their roster. We've heard of people who are having to travel to different counties in order to try to get a GP. Let us know what's going on in your situation. 0896 111 111, whether you're a patient or indeed whether you work in a GP's office.
And we also want to hear from you on this as well. At 8:15, Psychotherapist Colman Noctor is going to be here to discuss back to school and, of course, the worries and the transition from primary to secondary school. If you have a kid going back to school, if they're having a tantrum, they don't want to go, send us through your questions. 0896 111 111. We'll send them through to Colman.
You had one of your smiles on there. Are you having a bit of an issue?
No. They're back to school this week and it's bloody brilliant.
He's very happy. Alan. Hello, darling. Good morning.
Good morning. Lots of other stuff on the show also. We're going to be learning about the perils of skipping a patch test when you're dyeing your hair. We've got a back to basics beef stew if you're heading back to school. And I'm going to be immersing myself in the Goth life. Yes. Get ready for a new me. I'm going to be a goth by the end of the show. Now, Deric is king of the castle this morning in County Clare. Good morning, Deric.
Oh, Al, you would fit in nicely down here with your goth look. Anyway, King of the Castle is right because ahead of our trip to Carton House in Kildare tomorrow for a spot of golf, we've landed down here in beautiful East County Clare. Now, it is a wet start, especially across eastern and southeastern regions out there this morning, following that overnight heavy rain, but a return to drier, brighter and sunnier weather. So good news out there for the 27th of the month. Now, would you believe Craggaunowen down here in East County Clare is where we're at this morning. This place is absolutely steeped in history and heritage, dating back to both the Iron and Bronze Age. So we're going to be taking you on a tour. We've got the castle here behind me, as you mentioned, Al. We've got the Ring Fort. We've got the old wattle and daub houses. We've got the Fullock Fiat, St Brendan's Boat. We're going to be taking you on that folklore tour as well. So that's all coming live from beautiful East County Clare, right across the morning. Guys, I have not been here since my school tour about 35 years ago. So I'm really looking forward to this one.
It's real back to school. I was saying the exact same thing. I was like, oh my God, I used to love going there on my school tour. Real back to school vibes today.
Brilliant.
Good morning from East Clare.
Great stuff, Deric. Looking forward to having a look around East Clare and looking forward to being in Carton House to see Muir play golf tomorrow.
Okay, let's not talk about that. I'm nervous enough.
We will.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates on Virgin Media One.
Carmela Ger and a very good morning, Tommy Bjorn Show Chunta and Clare broadcasting live here from Craggaunowen in East County Clare. We're going to be taking you on a tour of this beautiful Bronze Age site. That's all coming your way into the back end of the show around 9:35. So mark that one down and we'll see you for that tour a little bit later on this morning live, of course. Now, we're getting past 7 o'clock here together. Joe McKenna with us on camera. So let's take an opening look at how it's shaping up for the day ahead as we pull back the curtains on your Tuesday morning for the 27th of the month. In fact, it's a very wet start in across eastern areas. We had all that heavy rain here in the west late last night, but into this morning now, plenty of showers through parts of Leinster, down across the southeast, and some of those once again leaning on the heavier side. So if you're making a break for it, you're back to school nice and early this week, do take extra care, caution on the roads. Return to drier and brighter weather here as the day goes on in those light to locally moderate southerly winds. Now, pushing our way through this afternoon, in fact, it is holding pretty decent, and you'll be glad to hear it is a return to drier, brighter and sunnier weather. A little bit of cloud cover up around the northwest through northern Camp, but the bulk of those showers by late afternoon should clear out through the southeastern corner of the country. So a sunnier day in store, you'll be glad to hear, and a nice lift too in terms of those temperatures. So good news all around, 17 to 22 in terms of those values. So nicely then into tonight, it looks like it will be mainly dry and settled to start. Good clear skies, then more rain building in from the west, and once again lean on the heavier side as we push our way into the hump of the week, with overnight lows they're back to around 11 to 14 degrees. So that's how it's shaping up here in a drizzly Craggaunowen in East County Clare this morning. We'll be back again live at 7:35. We'll see you then.
You need to be chilled to handle Irish weather. That's why Chill sponsor weather updates on Virgin Media One.
Now, coming up on Ireland AM, we're going to be getting into the day's news stories, including a proposed online safety code for video sharing platforms.
Yes, we're going to bring you all the details on that and everything else hitting the front of the papers in a few minutes.
Welcome back. It's time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. The headline there, Irish-trained Libyan soldiers deported by South Africa. Libyan soldiers previously trained by an Irish security company in an apparent breach of international sanctions were discovered at an alleged illegal training camp in South Africa last month.
HSE failing to chase private health insurers for millions. Millions of euro owed by private health insurers to hospitals for the treatment of insured patients is being written off, with the taxpayer picking up the bill. That's the front of the Irish Independent.
Child abduction claim fake news. Gardaí have condemned the dissemination of fake news after bogus child abduction claims circulated online, provoking 2 serious public order incidents. That is the top story on today's Daily Mail. And just to reiterate, no child was abducted.
The Star leads were for richer or poorer. A syndicate of Irish bar workers in Canada scooped a $1 million lotto jackpot in Canada with their first ever ticket.
The Herald's top story is gang hit as Bullets Hall seized. The Garda crackdown on the Hennessy organised crime group continues, with officers and Defence Forces personnel mounting a search operation that led to a cache of bullets being recovered.
The Mirror goes with definitely maybe. Oasis are to play in Ireland. There you have it, as part of their comeback tour next year, with Croke Park tipped as the venue. Find out at 8 o'clock.
Yes, we'll be keeping an eye on it. The Sun also leads with that story. Rock and Kjol stars Oasis will today unveil a series of tour dates, we are told, unless something goes wrong in the next hour, much to the delight of Liam and Noel's mum, Peggy, of course, who's from Mayo.
And finally, the Examiner leads with social media firms blast safety code. Lobby groups for social media giants, including TikTok and X, have claimed that Ireland's proposed online safety code aimed at protecting children from harmful content is overly prescriptive and overreaching.
Now, staying with that story, County has said this proposed online safety code will bring in obligations for video sharing platforms to protect users from harmful content.
Yeah, and joining us with that story this morning is political correspondent for the Irish Sun, Adam Higgins. Good morning to you, Adam. So we saw the Irish government coming out very strongly against these social media platforms over the last week or so. You're expecting these social media companies to come back at them. But do you think Ireland will be able to stick to its guns?
Yeah, I think so. And so what you're seeing today is 2 lobby groups representing those big, 3 big social media platforms, and they're expressing their disquiet with some of the measures that's in there. Chiefly among those is stuff about repeat offenders, so people who repeatedly put up harmful content, that they're not suspended from their platforms for a while. And the other is the age assurances.
They said that this goes beyond the requirements set out by the EU.
Most of their complaints are that what Ireland has put down is going beyond what the EU has prescribed, which it does. It does go stronger. And those headquarters are here, so it makes a difference. What we do to them here makes a difference across Europe, despite that EU directive. So this is why they're so concerned about it. And I think it's something that that timeline finishes this week, but I'd say it's going to be another couple of months before we see this online safety code really, we see the actions of it. We see these companies getting some of the fines or whatever it might be if we're not complying with it.
The things that they want to do on Commission Naman is a prohibition on uploading or sharing the likes of cyberbullying, racism, child sex abuse material, terrorism, incitement to hatred or violence. And it will also wants to limit things that promote self-harm, suicide or promotes eating disorders. It's things that are obvious and that shouldn't be allowed on these platforms anyway.
How can you argue against it?
I mean,
when you put it out like that, how can you argue against it? I mean, it's a bit silly, to be honest. But when you see what these companies are saying is that they're being overly prescriptive on their platforms, and that it'll take too long to try and implement this. Now, one thing I think a bit of a criticism I'd have of the online safety code is that when it comes to that age verification for children, it doesn't tell them how to do it. It says, you guys know best how to do it, but if you don't do it, we're going to fine you. I don't understand why they didn't say, well, do it with a passport. Like, I mean, for example, if you were a politician or a public figure and you wanted to set up a profile, you have to go through the verification of this is me, here's my formal identification, etc. If they did that for people who are underage when they're setting up their accounts, surely that would make it very easy for them to take stuff out of their streams.
Someone wants to buy alcohol and they get asked, let me see your ID. Should be the exact same way on social media as well. So,
but also, and I know we're not China and we're not, Big Brother society, or we're not meant to be, but they turn off TikTok for huge portions of the day for people under the age of 18. For under the age of 14, it's even less that you can use TikTok. They've just gone, Absolutely not. This is creating a sedentary bunch of people. You cannot use TikTok for like huge amounts of the day and it's turned off at night. We could do that.
Yeah,
They turned off X in Venezuela for 10 days.
One of the threats from Catherine Martin, who was the politician who pushed all this online safety stuff, is that if they get fines repeatedly, that she will take them out of Ireland, so that she can block, say, for example, TikTok from operating in Ireland for a certain period of time if they don't comply with the online safety code.
Like, they really are taking on the giants here,
Yeah.
but let's hope that they have the backing, Commissioner Mann, to really push through this, because we don't know the damage that this is doing to young kids around this country and across the world.
What do you think? We'd love to hear from you. 0896 111 111. And is it the sort of thing people keep on going, should we have to give verification of who we are to be using social media?
Totally. We'd love to hear from you. Yes. Also, now let's move on to this. So, new autism innovation strategy, 80 clear and simple actions that are going to be implemented by the government.
Yeah, this is an interesting plan, and I actually like the way they've laid it out as well. So there's 83 measures, there's 18 months to complete it, and beside each measure is the department or the person who is responsible for doing this. And you don't really see that often in plans.
No shirking.
Exactly, and that's something I think Simon Harris is probably pushing on, because you've seen that when it came to the tents outside Mount Street and that sort of thing as well. He was very much, there's no passing the buck here, let's Team Ireland get together and do this.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you're seeing in this plan. Now, the 83 measures, some of them do overlap. I mean, there's a lot of them that are, training for specific staff, and that kind of comes in a couple of times, things like that. So training for public staff and how to deal with autism or people with autism. And one of the measures I think is good is a major information campaign for the public to understand what autism is and that sort of thing. Because I do think there's a lot of people that don't really understand or know what autism is. And then there's other more kind of...
different levels of it.
Exactly, yeah.
And just parents having those stressful interactions when they're, we'll say, doing the shop or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like there's a lot going on that we don't understand.
There's a couple of more tangible measures as well, the likes of like a sensory room in airports, more quiet carriages on trains, things like that. Some things that you'll be physically able to see about the place over the next 18 months.
Okay, very good. Love that there's a bit of accountability on it.
Yeah.
Who's going to get this done?
There has, of course, been a huge amount of issues recently because there have been an awful lot of parents who have autistic children who haven't been able to get school places, who have publicly been speaking out. They marched to the Dáil, to Leinster House last week, even though they weren't in session.
Yeah.
So there are huge issues.
There really are, and I think this is one thing...
They might be frustrated with this going, hi, but still no school places.
This is one thing I think that Simon Harris gets a bit of criticism for, is that he's great for launching these big glossy plans, but the follow through, where is it, And I think even when you look at all this and you're thinking, this is lots of great ideas in this plan, but then the autism campaigner, Cara Darmody, met him yesterday and afterwards said, yeah, but he still can't tell us when this Disabilities Act of 2005, that's been in place 2005, a child has 6 months to get their assessment of needs, and that still doesn't happen. And the government are constantly in court getting, ruled against in this, and this happens time and time again. And so I think maybe get that right before we start, rolling out the other stuff. But I suppose doing them both.
But you've got to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
And autism is something that we're seeing, like it's across so many areas of the country as well, and trying to have that awareness. I just love the fact that exactly ministers and people are put their names alongside to get it done.
Love that, kind of going, okay, what's happening here?
Okay, now moving on to another story. The paper's so many different stories this morning. So, urgent dog reform on regulations. So we're obviously talking about the banning of XL bully breeds, but a doctor is saying that that's not enough.
Yeah, this is an interesting take from Dr. Joe Moore, and he's a GP and he's a lecturer in UCC. So we know that they've banned the XL bully. That's going to come in over the stage of the next few months up until February, when they'll be completely banned. And his point is that the majority of dog bites and injuries aren't from those restricted breeds. That he points to this study where it says that the most bites come from dogs like a collie or a spaniel or a terrier. And imagine that's because sheer numbers, there's a lot more of those dogs. But his point is that instead of trying to ban breeds, that the government should be instead doing more things to educate trainers and making it harder for people to avoid fines and for irresponsible owners to continue to keep and own their dogs.
This is what he points out to you. It's all about ownership of the dog and how they're reared, like an awful lot of the time. And it's not about, there is genetics, of course, involved, but that he says that these things happen across breeds that are not banned, and we have to take responsibility for how we are rearing dogs. We have to be responsible.
But I think when you look at the more serious attacks and the ones that result in people dying or really difficult injuries, that XL bully dog does come up quite a lot, and some of those restricted breeds, I mean, there's a reason they're restricted breeds. There's a reason the UK also went with this ahead of us and banned that XL bully. So I can understand where he's coming from here, but I don't know whether it'd be too light to not ban this dog when you see the amount of, deaths and serious injuries that come up.
But the way but he's saying that we should have a dog licence. There is a dog licence in Ireland.
Yeah.
I know lots of people with dogs. I doubt they have a dog licence.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't think about it if I was getting a dog.
Well, you're supposed to have the dog licence and be able to produce it, I think, when a dog warden or something like that. And another point he makes, which I think is probably worth looking at, is because there's a lot of criticism that there's not enough dog wardens who work for local councils, and they're supposed to be out checking that restricted breeds are muzzled and they're on the appropriate lead and that sort of stuff. And he makes the point that maybe the Gardaí should be doing that work as opposed to the dog wardens, because they're out and about on the streets a lot more, which I think is a decent point.
089 611 111.
Yeah, love to hear from you on that. Adam Higgins from The Sun, thank you so much for joining us on that. Plenty to go through this morning. Didn't get to ask if you wear socks in bed.
I was waiting for it.
We'll discuss that later on the show. Coming up next, we're going to be discussing instability in the Middle East as tensions between Israel and Hezbollah grow.
Back with you in just a minute.
You're very welcome back. Now, this past weekend saw Israel and Hezbollah trade attacks on each other, as well as Russia launching several waves of missile and drone attacks overnight targeting Kyiv and other regions.
Joining us to discuss the latest developments in both wars is security and defence analyst Declan Power. Good morning, Declan. It's lovely to have you. So, Russia have launched overnight a huge attack on Ukraine, over 200 missiles and drones.
It's missiles and drones, yeah. They have a huge amount of the Shahed drones that they're supplied with from Iran, which is interesting. Iran's tentacles are involved, in two wars now. They're behind Gaza and they're behind Russia in this war. But these attacks, they're interesting. They're directly against the electricity, the energy infrastructure. So this will cause a lot of misery for civilians in Ukraine this winter. There's no doubt about that. It's designed to sap the morale of the Ukrainian public and their support for Vladimir Zelensky. But also, it's designed to save face for Vladimir Putin. He started this war with a view to reclaiming what he claimed was part of the homeland. Now, part of the genuine Russian homeland has been invaded by Ukrainian troops. So the David versus Goliath. David has entered Goliath's territory. Now, it's symbolic. Even the Ukrainians themselves have said they're not going to hold on to that territory. Yeah. But they've laid a marker down. They've laid a marker down to Russia. They've made Vladimir Putin lose face in a way that he cannot hide to his own public. He can't cover this one up. But Zelensky has also shown the West that Ukraine is still up for the fight. They want to reclaim their territory. It's put him in a stronger position if and when negotiations start, meaningful negotiations start.
Now, I believe the attacks, because this is the second attack by Russia on Ukraine in recent days after Ukraine had their own efforts to attack Russia. But I believe there was a shell landed in East Poland as well. How dangerous is it that if this overspills and there's a casualty on another NATO state?
It's particularly worrying for all concerned, well, all on the western side anyway. It is believed that it may have been a drone that may have come down. Now, having said that, all of the neighbouring states would have air defence protections in place. The Poles are monitoring this. They're in a reasonably good position to protect themselves against a drone going astray.
If something went astray in Poland and there were casualties there, would they retaliate and join Ukraine? What would be the consequences of something like that happening?
There already has been an incident where some time earlier in the war where some device came down in Poland. If there were casualties, certainly that would ratchet up the tension. But I suspect what would happen would not be unilateral. Poland would not take any response without consultation within both its NATO network and European Union network. And the European Union is very much organising the political approach to this in concert with NATO. Poland would not do some silly knee-jerk reaction that would jeopardise things. So I would be confident that an initial response to something that went off course, or even if it was deemed to have been something provocative, that the countries around Ukraine would act with restraint, because nobody wants to see escalation.
Of course, and we've heard the UN nuclear head is to visit a Russian nuclear plant near where they're fighting is happening. We know that Russians have been fleeing the country so that they don't get conscripted into the army, and indeed that's why the incursion happened, because they were untrained soldiers on the line, and they just left. They just went, okay, we're done with this.
Well, also to add in, though, I mean, it was an incredible military intelligence coup for the Ukrainians. They kept it a secret. The Russians had no idea that this thrust was going to come into their territory. Sorry,
no, but it just feels like, he's not going to lose face on this. Like you say, when peace talks will happen, it doesn't. He doesn't want to lose face.
No, he doesn't.
Putin.
No.
Okay, we're going to have to move on to. We mentioned 2 wars, and of course there are a lot more wars than that happening over the world. But what's happening with the Hezbollah in Lebanon and Israel? What is the situation there? Because obviously there are a huge amount of Irish soldiers who are in South Lebanon. We've had the most casualties in that war of attrition between the two of them. The Irish army have had the most casualties of any other army who were doing the peacekeeping mission there. So what's the current situation?
It's largely a stalemate now, Maureen. There's been a bit of a tit for tat. Hezbollah lost one of their senior leaders. They wanted to show, particularly to their own constituency, that they're strong. We're back to the face-saving situation again, and they were in the process of planning to launch strikes. Israel claims it acted in a preemptive strike in a defensive manner when they launched missile strikes and airstrikes in Hezbollah territory in Lebanon. And the Lebanese launched their combined missile and drone strikes against Israel. Now, the mood music, though, to inject a small note of positivity, the mood music coming from both camps is, we've done what we've done, we're not interested in escalating it further. I would suggest that there'll be a continuation of low-intensity conflict, tit-for-tat missile strikes that will continue, but that it won't escalate at this point in time into all-out war.
You were stationed in Lebanon back in the 90s. What was it like then, and compared to even what you believe it is like nowadays over in Lebanon for the Irish troops?
Well, Tommy, Lebanon was always a dangerous place for the Irish soldier, for any UN soldier, because things could escalate and shift rapidly. The network of alliances and different armed groupings down there always meant that soldiers, even in small units working through the communities, had to be on alert for shifts in alliances and how they could become the target. And there were missile strikes going on and air strikes going on in the 90s as well. The Oslo Accords led to an agreement between the Israeli-backed forces of the South Lebanese Army and Hezbollah not firing on each other from near civilian targets, which limited the civilian casualties, because when they would retaliate, obviously, civilians in villages and in installations would get killed as part of the collateral damage. The difference for the Irish soldier and the UNIFIL soldier now is that the locals are not as friendly to UNIFIL as they once were. There isn't the same reliance on UNIFIL. Hezbollah, because it has infiltrated throughout the Lebanese state and is part of the Lebanese government, it has got stronger as an organisation politically. Militarily, it has become much stronger. It's not the terrorist organisation that it was. Politically, yes, but it has become much more of a conventional military formation. It has stockpiled weapons throughout South Lebanon, and it doesn't want the UN being able to report back to New York about the types of weapons that it has stockpiled and its movements. So it has weaponized the civilian population to impede UNIFIL access and movements. And that has led to confrontations between UNIFIL soldiers, including Irish soldiers, and locals.
And obviously the Irish government said a few weeks ago, Irish citizens, please leave Lebanon because we need you to get out. We can't guarantee your safety there if you are there. Just in relation to Gaza, because UN humanitarian operations in Gaza have been forced to halt yet again after the Israelis said that they are going to launch another attack, this time in central Gaza. So we've just seen the last 2 days thousands of people fleeing again. Yeah. We're coming up to an American election where this is a huge issue.
Yes.
Is there there's no end in sight?
Not at the moment, Maureen, I would agree. There's been a lot of talk about a ceasefire. I think the US government has been talking it up with the hope that it would create positive momentum and pressure for both sides to sit down. The best I could see happening in the immediate future would be maybe a series of tactical pauses or mini ceasefires for certain periods of time. The reason I'm saying that is both sides have nothing to gain at the moment for a ceasefire. Netanyahu's government are under pressure from within, from the extreme right-wing element, and from without, they're looking at the US elections. Yeah. So I don't think anything meaningful will happen until after the next US president is installed. If it's Donald Trump, the Israelis reckon, why not hold out? And if it is him, they know they'll have a free hand. If it's Kamala Harris, I think she's laid down a marker already that she's not going to give Israel the free hand that it has been expecting and demanding from the US. And we could see that the start of something leading to the end of the conflict then.
Yeah, meanwhile, over 40,000 and counting have died.
Absolutely.
Frightening
That's the
situation all over the world at the minute. Declan Power, Security and Defence Analyst, great to have you with us.
Thank you,
Thank you
Declan.
so much for that update.
Now we're going to move on to a story closer to home. Alan, what's up next?
Yes, indeed. We're with more than 3/4 of GP practices closing their clinics to new patients. We'll be talking about the lack of GP services in this country. So if that's something that's affecting you, you can send us a WhatsApp on 089 611 111. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll be back here very shortly.
Welcome back. Now, the health service is currently experiencing a GP shortage, with a reported 3/4 of 2,500 GP practices in the country having to close their lists to new patients. That's according to the Irish College of General Practitioners.
And joining us now from his practice in Clare to discuss the ongoing crisis with staff shortages is GP and spokesperson for the Irish College of GPs, Professor Liam Glynn. Good morning to you, Professor. Liam, thank you very much for joining us this morning. When we're listening to those figures, and like 3/4 of the GPs in this country have stopped their list, nobody else can get in, what's going on?
Well, quite simply, we don't have a sufficiently large GP workforce. Over the last couple of decades, our population has increased, and the business of general practice has got a lot more complicated. And at the same time, we haven't had a concomitant increase in our GP workforce. So we need a much larger GP workforce. I'm sitting here as a GP who's been working in rural practice for the last 26 years. It's an incredibly satisfying and impactful career, and you really can make a difference to the health and well-being of a community. But we really need to attract more and more doctors into the profession. But one of the basic reasons for this is that we train our medical students largely in hospitals, and it goes back to the old sporting adage we're all familiar with: if they can't see it, they can't be it. So we really need to be training, creating much more training in the community in general practice, so that medical students are mentored by high quality and get high quality general practice teaching. We're actually calling, in a recent submission to the Strategic Task Force in General Practice, we're calling for a minimum of 25% of clinical training should happen in the community and in general practice. And there needs to be a national funding model to support these clinical placements, because that creates then a pipeline of general practitioners who will hopefully then over the next number of years, increase that workforce that we so desperately need.
You just said there, Liam, that the business of being a GP has gotten more complicated. Why is that? What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that we have an aging population, and general practice traditionally, when the contract that I signed to become a GP was originally designed in the 70s, was really designed as a response to acute illness. People come in acutely unwell with a sore throat or a lung infection, and you manage them. Now we've moved to a much more preventative model, where we're seeing people when they're not sick, and we're trying to prevent them getting sick. And I mean that in the sense of acute illness, but also in the sense of chronic illness. So we're seeing our patients with chronic illnesses like heart disease and lung disease and diabetes, and we're seeing them systematically so we can prevent the complications of these conditions. So that's how it's become a much more complex. And our population, as you age, you invariably accumulate more chronic conditions to be managed.
So how many GPs are needed? Because we're saying here that over the next 5 years, 700 GPs are set to retire. So that's 700 gone out of the system in the next 5 years. How many GPs will we need every year just to keep up?
Well, currently our workforce is estimated between 4,000 and 4,500, and the predictions are we're going to need a workforce of at least 6,000 GPs. Now currently, everybody who has a vested interest in this, the HSE, the Irish College of General Practitioners, Department of Health, are working to try and increase that workforce. Our GP training places have doubled in the last 10 years, and now we're bringing in 350 doctors every year to train them to be general practitioners. But we have an aging workforce. About 25% of our general practice workforce is over the age of 60, and 5% are over the age of 70. So those retirements you're talking about are a real issue. And the truth is that we really need to train a very high number of GPs over the next number of years to replace that workforce. There's also some other really important initiatives that have happened, such as the International Medical Graduates Programme, which has been a collaboration again between the HSE and the Irish College of General Practitioners to allow GPs who aren't trained in the EU to give them a career pathway to become general practitioners in Ireland. So there's a number of different initiatives that we're going to need to, there's not a single solution to this, but there's a number of different initiatives that we need to support in order to try and fill this workforce.
Liam, there's 1,015 GPs in training, 350 new trainees this year. We see here that a third of GPs can't take annual leave because they cannot get covered. There's no locum work. And we spend so much time on this show talking about the fact that GPs and nurses and doctors in Ireland, they train and off. They're gone to Australia, they're gone somewhere else. Does one go in hand with the other here?
Well, no, it doesn't. I mean, if you actually sit down and a survey was done recently by the Irish College of General Practitioners, because we're all very exercised about this idea. And when you ask general practitioners in training in this country what their career aspirations are, the vast majority of them, it's to work in Ireland. And of course, in any profession, people are going to go abroad and work abroad for a number of years. And that's actually good for a profession because it brings in new methods and new training, etc. So that's not we shouldn't look at that as a bad thing. However, in order that we don't have a brain drain in terms of our medical staff, we need to make sure that our terms and conditions in this country are the equivalent of anywhere globally. Or yes, we will get a move elsewhere.
Liam, can I ask you, is it worse in rural areas? Because like you see, maybe GPs want to work basically in capital cities like Dublin or the bigger cities and not necessarily want to go to a small village. Do you see that it's worse in those rural areas?
It is much more difficult to get staff in rural areas, and I'm a rural GP myself, and I see that day in, day out. We had a local practice next door to my own practice in Listonvarna in County Clare, where the single-handed GP who was working there for many years and gave a wonderful service was retiring, and the post was advertised 3 times and there was 0 applicants. And in fairness to the local HSE, we all sat down as a group of stakeholders and said, right, how are we going to solve this problem? And in fairness, they funded what we're calling the Rural Fellowship Programme and essentially attached that to the practice. And it basically gave a doctor to work in the practice for a number of days a week alongside the incoming GP. Yeah. And suddenly there was 3 applicants for the post, and that post has now been filled, thankfully, which is really important. So there are ways to solve this problem. And you're absolutely right about rural areas. One of the biggest fears that incoming GPs have, and one of the biggest struggles we have day in, day out in rural practice, is getting cover. And if you have, as you say, a profession where a third of the profession cannot take their holidays because they can't get cover, very soon you will have exits from that profession. So it's really important that we try and solve that local problem. We're calling it locum lifeline, because it is a lifeline to rural general practitioners. Yeah. And we're asking the government to support a guaranteed 2 to 4 weeks of locum cover for rural practice, just the most rural and remote practices. Yeah. And we recognise those through what's called the Rural Practice Support Framework. Yeah. So attaching a locum cover element, or the locum lifeline, as we're calling it, to that, I think is only fair.
I can't imagine anyone going, I'm going to do a job and never be able to take a holiday. Absolutely mad. Listen, Liam, thank you so much. A GP, Professor of General Practice in UL and spokesperson for the Irish College of GPs, Dr. Liam Glynn, who's got a child heading off from primary to secondary school today. And we're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes. Liam, thank you so much for joining us. Because still to come this morning, psychotherapist Colman Noctor, he's going to be here to talk about back to school anxiety, transition from primary to secondary. Any questions? 0896 111.
We all had it.
111.
Yeah, we all had it. Plus a beefy back to school recipe. There's stew in the kitchen. We'll see in a few minutes.
Time now to take a look at this morning's papers. We'll start with the Irish Times. The headline there, Irish-trained Libyan soldiers deported by South Africa. Libyan soldiers previously trained by an Irish security company in an apparent breach of international sanctions. They were discovered at an alleged illegal training camp in South Africa last month.
HSE failing to chase private health insurers for millions. Millions of euro owed by private health insurers to hospitals for the treatment of insured patients is being written off, with the taxpayer picking up the bill. That's the front of the Irish Independent.
Child abduction claim fake news. The Gardaí have condemned the dissemination of fake news after bogus child abduction claims circulated online, provoking 2 serious public order incidents. That's the top story on today's Daily Mail.
The Star leads with, for richer or poorer, a syndicate of Irish bar workers scooped a $1 million lotto jackpot in Canada with their first ever ticket.
The Herald's top story is gang hit as Bullets Hall seized. The Garda crackdown on the Hennessy organised crime gang continues, with officers and Defence Forces personnel mounting a search operation that led to a cache of bullets being recovered.
The Examiner leads with social media firms blast safety code. Lobby groups for social media giants, including TikTok and X, have claimed that Ireland's proposed online safety code aimed at protecting children from harmful content is overly prescriptive and overreaching.
The Mirror goes with definitely Mayoby. Oasis are to play in Ireland as part of their comeback tour next year, with Croke Park tipped as the venue. It has just been confirmed it is indeed the venue.
And The Sun also leads with Rock and Kyo stars. Oasis will today unveil a series of tour dates, much to the delight of Liam and Noel's Irish mum. And it has been announced.
It has been announced, and they are coming to Croke Park.
The dates are the 16th and 17th, is it? They're going to be 16th and 17th of August next year, and the tickets are going to go on sale this Saturday morning.
Yes, in a joint statement, the band said, "The guns have fallen silent, the stars have aligned, the great wait is over. Come see, it will not be televised."
I am so
Until we get a bigger offer, and then it might be televised after all the concerts.
Yeah, I was just there going, Fiona, our producer here, was like, and we will be speaking. I'm like, Liam and Noel are coming on the show. No, Ed Smith is going to be talking to us. And I just want to let you know a headline from Waterford Whispers News. Do you like Waterford Whispers?
Yeah.
What is it?
They're like, how to get your refund when Oasis cancel concerts next year. Satirical website.
It won't happen. It won't happen.
Oh, you're
Oh,
annoyed.
look at Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy's thinking, I might go to Cardiff, I might go to Wembley, I might go to
them all.
Dublin.
Can't bloody wait. Honestly, you can stick to your Taylor Swift, Alan. No, you weren't mad with that.
You
either.
love Taylor
me
Swift. Why are you slagging something you love?
You thought Taylor Swift was better than I did.
Anyway, love it, Taylor, but not no Oasis.
You can be all things. All
Right,
things. Anyway,
let's talk
things to
serious.
best of luck on
Serious.
Saturday morning. And
Yeah,
that's going to
getting
be
through to
something
that.
else.
2 days.
So
in
they are
Dublin.
coming, that is confirmed.
One thing people wish were coming were more GPs.
More GPs. We were talking about this, the lack of GPs, and that GPs have stopped. There's no, you can't get into a GP. And Patsy says, I work in a busy 4 GP, 2 nurse practice. There are 4 other GP practices in the town. We've closed our books as we are so busy looking after the patients we have. Not a day goes by that people don't ring up or call in to see, are they taking new patients, which we can't. But the one thing that really maddens me is people not turning up for the appointments. Every day we get about 5 no-shows, and these are stopping other people. Why don't you just phone and say, I'm sorry, and then they could phone somebody and
They
go...
should be penalised if
But
they
that's what I'm
no-show.
saying.
Yes.
Totally should be
Regardless
penalised.
of whether you're paying medical card, whatever, if you're not going to show up, there has to be a
Absolutely.
penalty.
Something.
Repercussions.
So
Like,
is that, you know... It's,
you're out.
Yeah,
See ya.
and it can
Don't
accidentally
turn up.
happen, of course, but if someone continues
But
to
if
do
she's
this...
saying
you'd be like,
5 a
"I'm done."
day
Nah, it's
on
ridiculous.
average...
Loretta says we live in a rural area. We cannot get to see our doctor. We phone to get reception who asks us our problem, tells us they'll get the nurse to call us back. When the nurse phones back, could take up to 3 hours to get through. And then they go through the symptoms again that only be told they'll speak to the doctor and phone us back. They don't phone us back, but send us a text with a prescription to send to the pharmacy. I've had 5 chest infections this year, and not once did I get to see our doctor. And this is the frustration. I know this exactly. You can't get to talk. You can't get to see the doctor. You might get them on the phone, but it's impossible.
I wouldn't put up with that. If you've had 5 chest infections, there's something wrong.
You can't get to see your doctor.
I'd insist, because every doctor will tell you that if you actually are not well, there are spaces in a doctor's like diary throughout the day for emergency people to come in and see them.
We've got a message here from a GP who says, I'm a GP in Cork and we are constantly short-staffed despite advertising and interviewing continuously. It's frustrating that I can't provide the level of care I'd like to my patients. Also, now this is something. Our reception staff get continuous abuse about the unavailability of appointments when it is completely and utterly outside their control. And we all know the receptionists in GP surgeries, they are bulldogs because they've got an incredibly hard job. They are, like we all know, like you have to be a certain type of person who can do this. But I was talking to the receptionist in my GPs there recently, and like the abuse, I don't know how they do it.
They shouldn't get abused, but I've been sort of annoyed when a receptionist, I've gone for a blood test, and the nearest one would be like 6 weeks away.
But you're not making it up, like.
No, I know, but then you do just get annoyed about it. You go, surely there's I can get a blood test quicker than 6 weeks away. And I'm sure just people when they're not well or they feel they're not well and not being looked after.
But someone ain't going to make you feel
I wouldn't
better.
be shouting at them, but I'd be going, that can't be right. Yeah, you'd be literally going, that can't be right.
You can see the frustration right here as well. So thank you for your text this morning. And if you want to get in touch with us on any topic, WhatsApp us 0896 111 111.
Now, lots of you have reached out for some back-to-school advice.
We'll put your questions to Psychotherapist Colman Noctor after the break.
You're very welcome back. Now, many of us hate to see the summer go. As the school year begins, some kids may experience higher levels of anxiety than others, but some parents are delighted to see the kids.
Real smile on your face today. Yeah. From new schools to new teachers, it can be a lot to navigate. And psychotherapist Colman Noctor joins us now to offer some guidance. It's lovely to have you here, Colman, because while a lot of us are like, it's grand looking back on our school days, it is something that causes an awful lot of anxiety for certain pupils.
It is. I mean, again, the summer is quite long. You know, you get used to some fairly ingrained routines over that time, whether it's bedtime and rules and screen devices. So when you're back to that structure, it's an adjustment for adults, but adjustments can be more difficult for children. But I think at certain transitions, like starting school on the first day in junior infants, moving into first year of secondary school, those kind of peak transitions can be especially difficult. And there's a lot of young people would be anxious. I think even the most bravado kids can be anxious around, especially that secondary school transition. I think that's massive. I mean, if you think about when you're in primary school, you have one teacher for the whole year. They know you, you know them. It's a fairly small pond a social pond to get used to. Then you're into this completely different environment. You have 10 teachers, different personalities, trying to make friends, trying to find the geography of the new building. You're going to a locker with a chap with a beard behind you. You know, you're carrying a school bag that weighs heavier than you do. Like, there's a massive shift. And again, I think for most children, they would find that difficult. That is a difficult transition to make.
We'll talk to secondary school in just a second, but go and say primary school, a lot of younger kids. Do you find the parents hyping up about the uniforms, the stress, I'd imagine, that they put on their kids, heightens their anxiety as well, and something that parents probably should be mindful of? Actually just relax a little bit. It's not such a big deal, and don't get the kids so anxious.
That's a real difficult balance to get, because you don't want to ambush the kid by not telling them what's happening, but then there is the big furore and the carnival over the summer and big school, and you're going to be a big boy, and there's big Facebook and Instagram photo shoots in the morning, all that sort of stuff. It's building up that kind of anticipation of what's ahead. I mean, for me, a lot of the anxiety on the first day can be parents as much as it is children. You know, that's a big thing. You're handing over your child to another institution for the next 8 years. Like, it's much more significant than just that. And oftentimes where a parent is perhaps upset, the child will pick up on that. And I would say the same advice every year. If your temptation is to hang around, don't. right? Because if
Oh,
you're
the school
hovering,
gates kind of
say
thing.
if your child's upset
Yeah.
going in and you're hovering, what you're saying to the child is, I don't trust these guys either.
Okay.
You know, and from that point of view, these teachers are well used to managing children on those first day.
Turn around
and walk away and allow the child to settle into that classroom.
Because you do see that a lot of kids and their parents at the gates, and the kid doesn't want to go in. You do see an awful lot of that. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult. But in that situation, by hovering and staying around, and if you're the parent with the binoculars in the hedge looking through the window, you are giving that message that you're not able, that
you don't trust
I don't trust this place either. And the children will pick up on that.
A message here from Amy, who said that her child struggled a little bit with school last year in first class. This year, she doesn't quite know what to do if she sees him struggling again. Should she initiate conversations or let him come to her? Because she did a bit of both last year and nothing seemed to work, she felt.
Yeah, I think you check in how he's feeling about it before he goes back, you know, in terms of trying to get a sense of whether the same worries are there. But some children just struggle with the change of routine. So it just takes a couple of weeks to settle back into that. So, you know, I would anticipate that might happen again if he's just a kid that doesn't shift gears quite as quickly as someone else. You're just trying to be as consistent and predictable as possible, you know, by offering him support. But I wouldn't be jumping in problem identifying because...
But like say every day, like she comes home, how are you today? How was everything? Was that person nice to you? Is that a bit too much? And could you be creating problems in the child's head?
Yeah, again, when a child's finished school, that's when we say, how did you get on today? Who are you playing with? That's a kind of shining your light in the face kind of interrogation. And your child's not going to respond to that. Oftentimes, it's at 9 o'clock at night when they're going to bed, they start to tell you about how the day has been. And I would always say fit around your child's timetable, not expect them to fit into yours. So if he's not full of information afterwards, revisit it later on when he's less tired or kind of less stimulated from it. But it's gentle kind of questioning. It's not probing and it's not interrogation.
Okay.
You know, that he doesn't feel that he's microscopically, because the more anxious you are in terms of your questions, he'll interpret there's a reason to be anxious.
Yeah.
Okay. Transitioning from primary school to secondary school is probably one of the biggest transitions and challenges a kid will have growing up and teenagers.
It's massive. And again, I would try and say that I would encourage schools to do everything they can to try and ease that transition. Sometimes they bring them in a little bit earlier. Just even small leniencies. You know, let them out for lunch a few minutes earlier, let them out at school at the end of the day a little bit earlier. They're small gestures, but they make a huge difference to that first year who's in that environment. Again, biologically, puberty is raging at that time. But I'd also say to parents, pick your battles, right? So your child will struggle. They will get lost going to class. They will forget a book. They will do these. They're all absolutely to be expected. And you allow them
friend groups as well, big one.
Again, trying to find and make those friends is really difficult. But when primary school, we might be very involved in our child's, know the teacher, first name terms, all that sort of stuff. Of course, if your child is being bullied or excluded or there's something sinister going on, absolutely get involved. But the hardest part about first year is stepping back and allowing them to become independent, because they make huge strides between September first year and September second year. My own son is just going into second year. He's unrecognisable from the little lad who went in September the year before. But you have to allow him the space to develop that independence.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Because it's so interesting what you just said there, and you forget their first years are little kids and they're in school with people who are adults. Beards walking around the place.
It's such a daunting environment.
Mad.
Yeah. And again, imagine like trying to get to know every teacher, trying to get to know. Mistakes will happen. They will forget the book. They'll get lost. They'll do all that. That's a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Allow that to happen. And that's not something parents need to get worked up about, because that's happening to 50% of the kids as they try and negotiate that shift.
What if a kid, there's a reluctance, goes in for a day or two, decides I don't want to go, and kicking and screaming, just I do not want to go into school? What should a parent do?
Again, I suppose in junior infants that would be quite a common occurrence. It's such a shift. They don't really understand it. They haven't got the cognitive ability to make sense of it.
But even in primary school or secondary school, and the parents don't exactly know what's the root of the problem, why they're so scared, or maybe something went on.
Well, the reasons for children not wanting to go to school are either the peer group, the environment, the teachers, or they don't want to leave home. And that's the last one's an important one. Sometimes it's about, I'm worried about mom when I'm in school, so I want to stay at home and mind mom. There's that sort of a side of things that we sometimes miss. But go through it. Ask them, is it the peer group? Do they have friends? How's their social world? Is it the academics? Is it the work? Is it too hard? Is it too challenging? Is it the teachers? Is there personality clash? Is there something going on? Or is it the general environment altogether? If you can identify that, then you can address it. But sometimes it can be all of those things. What I would say is I would persist to get the child in. I think if you start holding a child off school, you're kind of getting into habits there that can be really difficult to crack down the line. By all means, speak to the teachers, explain your concerns and have them aware of it. But if you can keep that routine going, even though it's upsetting and it's not something the child wants to do, it can sometimes be better than leaving them at home.
I think we hear inside here an awful lot from teachers like, please be on our side. We're trying to do the best for your child. But I suppose we want to be positive about this because so many children thrive in school. They absolutely love it. It's great, that thing is ever. But say you notice and you're like, okay, this isn't working out for my child. I don't want to start off a negative here, but just in case, right? How long do you leave something? How do you think, oh my God, this school does not suit my child, or geez, they're in a very bad way? Because that's a big thing for secondary school.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would certainly allow a settling in period.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be doing anything before Halloween. That'll be absolutely. It'll take any child that time to adjust into that. Again, persisting with something that isn't working is oftentimes not the best thing to do either. But again, sometimes you're going from the frying pan to the fire if you're moving a child. So these are things that you'd have to kind of carefully think out. I wouldn't be making reflex and rash decisions. I would work it out. I'd have a chat with all the stakeholders, teachers, other parents, anything else that you're getting on. Again, pick your battles. If your child has special needs or are struggling with any sort of educational support, absolutely be an advocate there.
Yes.
If they're being bullied, if there's anything sinister going on, absolutely have a pathway paved to the school. However, if it's the hiccups and the trials and tribulations, step back, because you're right. There's a window of maturity. There's an opportunity for maturity here. We have to step back and allow them to do that. They won't do it if you're doing it for them.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting as well. It's difficult as a parent to step back sometimes, but that's the hardest thing to do as well. Colman Noctor, I know you're in the front of the Examiner today as well, a piece about the empty nest when kids go to third level education as well. Another very interesting read. I'm sure we've discussed that too. But psychotherapist, as always, great advice. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Now, welcome back. Back to school means back to basics for most households.
It sure does. Here to make us a one-pot wonder is Edward Hayden with a beef and vegetable casserole. Good morning to you, Edward.
Good morning to you both.
And you have our little little napkins folding here.
There
what did you call it?
It's either a bishop's mitre is what you could do. Yeah, or a little party hat.
There you go.
One or the other.
One or the other.
The napkins were really good, so I just thought we could do it.
Nothing says back to school like a nice casserole like this.
I know, isn't it terrible? And that whole that gravitating back to a routine can be good or bad, and we all resist it. And I sometimes think just to get back in. So it is that school time. It's homely. We're less ad hoc than we would have been. So therefore, the food needs to get likewise as well. And also, when I woke up this morning, I was kind of thinking, what a recipe to have on a day like this.
Dark and raining,
where we are. This is a really nice kind of a beef dish. Now, obviously, people might choose to cook this in the slow cooker if their timeline allowed that or facilitated it.
Yeah.
So basically what I've just done, as always, just as we were on the ad break there, is I've just started by sautéing off the beef. So I've just got some nice stewing beef there as well. So get some nice stewing beef. Obviously the recipe for this is interchangeable. You can use lamb as well, if lamb is your fancy. I quite like stewing lamb. It's not everybody's thing. But
I do my stew with mince.
Yeah, of course. People do their stews with mince as well.
Edward, sorry, if you're doing it in a slow cooker, do you braise it off first and then put it in?
It's like people, are you a rinser before you go into the dishwasher? I am as well.
Yeah.
So if I was doing this in a slow cooker, I'd probably build it in the pot and then transfer it into the slow cooker. Right. So exactly what I've done there is I've just started sautéing off the beef. I'm then going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to that once it has been sealed off. So again, all of that juice will be maintained. Then, if I just take that off for 1 second, you just have an opportunity then to play around with. Al and I were talking about the virtues and disvirtues of parsnips there. So I probably wouldn't use parsnips, but you can. It's really up to yourself what it is that you want to put in here. So I've got what I call the basic stew or soup vegetables. I've got some onions, which I've put some garlic in.
You have to have onions.
You have to have onions, of course. They give that depth of flavour.
And you have to have carrots.
I have the carrots in there as well.
I'd give the celery a miss.
Well, that's kind of the base,
That is
not?
the basics, absolutely. Oh, Jesus, I tell you, he's been swatting up over.
But I'm just saying, I would give the celery a miss.
Yeah, the carrots, leeks, onions, and celery would be the kind of the 4 base flavours that give you a really nice flavour. Now, what I'd say, I often think celery does get a bit of bad press in terms of, I mean, I would at home sometimes maybe cook it as a vegetable on its own, maybe a little bit of white sauce or something like that.
Celery,
and it's lovely. Yeah, celery and white sauce, lovely. But again, people, that might be too far for people, but it is great to kind of just inject that flavour because it has a nice, good, robust flavour in there. What I've also put in, maybe not in the base flavour, but again, that kind of stewy, earthy style, is I've put in some turnip. So I've diced turnip going in there as well. But again, maybe think of things like sweet potato. Celeriac works really well in there as well. Again, it's just to bulk up on vegetables as well. I quite like vegetables, so it's really just to bulk up on those. Okay, so there we have it, just like that. That's sautéing off really nicely. Then what I've got is I've got some flour here, and into the flour I'm just going to put a bit of paprika. So pop all of that in there. Use paprika, use cayenne pepper if you want. Okay, just gives you a bit of flavour. Now, as always, when you put flour into something like that, I'm going to add some tomato puree with it. So I've got a teaspoon of tomato puree in there as well.
What's that for?
The tomato puree, it'll help you with the colouring. So it gives you a lovely, it helps with the deeper colouring. And again, the tomato puree is a concentrated flavour. So again, it's a good flavour injection. Now, just look at this.
What's the flour for, Edward?
The flour is your thickening agent, so that your nice sauce that you're going to have in just a second will be kind of really nice and thick, you know, that it's not going to be watery.
Saucy.
Okay? Now, so there you have it. Just saute that up. And I don't mind doing that on the heat because that will allow the kind of the flour to colour up as well. But you can see it all looks a bit dry and yucky there at the minute.
And is it at this stage you'd stick it into the slow cooker?
No, I'm going to add my liquids just next. Yeah, just add my liquids. Now, of course, you could and then add the liquids into the slow cooker. I had a glass of wine left over. Good man. So I'm going to throw that in. I've reserved it over the weekend for you.
So drop a red wine.
I was abstemious over the weekend in your favour.
Well done.
Then in with the glass of wine, and then I'm going to put in some stock in there as well.
So is that just an ordinary stock cube?
Just an ordinary stock cube. And what you do need to do then is exactly as I'm doing, get right down to the bottom of the pan here, and I'm just going to start scraping that so that you're going to take off any of the flour that has stuck to the bottom of the pan, and that's going to kind of form the thickening agent.
That already looks lovely.
It looks lovely already. So another little bit of stock in there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in there some of my fresh thyme or some rosemary just by means of immersion in there as well. Now, the options that you have at this stage, you can either put that in the slow cooker for your 6 or 7 hours. You can push it into a casserole dish in the oven, or you can just stick a lid on it and leave it simmering away.
But you would have to keep coming back and stirring it.
Stirring it back 100%.
Sorry, see the rosemary, Edward? Is the rosemary put on top there?
I put a bit of thyme in the recipe. I've said a bit of thyme and rosemary.
You wouldn't have chopped that up and put it in?
No, because what's going to happen exactly, and thanks for asking, when you take that out, when this is cooked, you'll be able to just pull it out.
Okay.
And all of the leaves
flavour.
have become denuded, and you'll add to the flavour. Okay. Now, I've just got some potatoes here, which I have just boiled. I've steamed them, and I'm just going to give those a little mash for you.
Now, would you
so a little bit of mashed
throw
potato.
a big knob of butter into that?
I have it in there.
All right,
what I've done is just before, when I strained them, I put it in there, and I just allowed it to melt in there so that the butter would be nice and hot. Okay.
You put a drop of milk in as well. Some people do.
Some people really do, and some people love it. I'm not a wet mash person, so therefore I never inflict that on anybody else because I don't like it. I think no one likes it. But a lot of people love that whole creamy mash, don't they? And wet mash. So I don't like wet mash, so therefore no one ever gets it. Now, look at this then when it comes out of the oven. So I've put that into the oven for about an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Oh, look at
and
that.
Again, look at that. It's just absolutely
So just the mash goes in
gorgeous.
first, is it? And then just put it on top of it.
I'm just going to put a little bit of mash then into your bowl, okay? Just a little, and I'm just going to put the lovely stew on the top. So it's real rustic, it's not fancy, it's just absolutely delicious. But it's kind of...
Tommy is going, will you just come on, stop talking?
Ready. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
It's a real burst of flavour, you know, it's a bowl full of flavour. As I said before to you, something like that is a hug in a bowl.
Yeah, this is me.
Okay.
This is me. I just love a nice stew.
So sit down at the table.
Thank you so much for that.
You're very welcome.
Absolutely delicious.
Oh my goodness.
Very hot though. Thank you so much. Up next, whether it's at the salon or a box from your home, Claire Fulham will be telling us all you need to know about colouring your hair.
Yeah, that's coming up after this short break. Very good.
Hello, welcome back. Now, it's something many of us have been doing for many a year, but there are risks that come with dyeing one's hair.
Yes, from allergic reactions to skin irritation, trichologist Claire Fulham is here to tell us the importance of patch testing before we try anything. Good morning to you.
Hi.
And we were just looking at a picture here, which we might put up immediately to show what can happen if you don't patch test and you're going to dye your hair, because this is a massive allergic reaction to something.
Yeah, so this is an allergic reaction we'll see now in a second rather than a skin irritation, you know? So there's a big difference between like an allergic reaction and skin irritation. This is swelling. This is, you know, she probably had a cough. She probably felt her throat closing slightly as well with this. A lot of itching, a lot of swelling, as you can see as well.
So is that just a reaction to something that's in the dye?
Yes. Majority of the time, it's something called PPD. That's what you'll have the allergy for. And the darker the hair colour or the eyelash colour or the eyebrow colour or the tattoos, the more likeliness you'll have, you know, the darker the colour.
So this is why patch testing is important, to make sure you're not allergic to something.
Absolutely.
What is a patch test?
So a patch test is you'll go into your salon, again, your beautician doing your eyelashes or eyebrows or your hair as well, and they'll put a tiny little bit of colour, normally behind your ear or in the crook of your elbow as well, and you have to go away for, depending on the colour or depending on the insurance company, you'll go away for 24 hours, 48 hours and make sure that you have no sort of reaction to it, and then they should perform the service. And you should constantly get that checked, you know?
Okay, because one people would think, I've had my patch test done, I am good to go. I've heard people being really annoyed when they change salon, gone, I did a patch test, clearly my hair is dyed, why do I have to do another one?
Yeah. So no, when you go through, like especially women, you go through so many hormonal changes in your life, you should be getting a patch test done every 6 months, even if you've gotten the same colour from the same salon, from the same stylist for 40 years, you should continue to get a colour.
Why?
Because, right, will we do our little display now?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Because this is something that you have taught me very recently, and I never knew this.
No, a lot of people don't know this. So you're born with this empty glass, okay? So you're born with this empty pint glass or whatever, and every time you go and get your eyelashes done, it fills up a little bit. Now, you don't know if it's filled up that much or if it fills up like half your capacity. Every time you get your eyebrows tinted, it fills up again. Every time you get your colour done, it could fill up hugely. Every time you get a tattoo, this is all contains PPD, it will start to fill up, okay? So when we get an irritation on the scalp or on the eyes or the eyebrows, you're starting to get up towards the point where you could possibly have an allergic reaction. So it's not like a peanut allergy or, you know, like something that you're born with perhaps. This is the more you use colour, the more likely you are to have a reaction.
Okay, so the more you go...
Exactly.
You're creating the allergy because your skin is like, I'm done now, I can't take any more of this.
Absolutely, yeah. And the worst thing that can happen is an allergic reaction, like the girl we saw there, the swelling.
So then what do you do if there is... You just don't get your hair dyed ever again?
You can, depending on the kind of, I suppose, the grade of the reaction, do you know? Like a lot of people will get irritation after colour. Like that's pretty normal, depending on your age, depending on how often you go get your colour as well.
What do you mean by irritation? Does it feel like, you know, dandruff,
like itch or
scabby?
something?
Yeah, like itching, irritation, a slight burning sensation in the scalp, that would be like an irritation, but that's also a warning sign to say, be careful now. Keep getting your patch test done because one day this pint glass will overflow, perhaps, and you could get an allergic reaction. Now, it could be like that, and every single time you get another little, it could, like, it could be kind to you, but you don't know.
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
So will there come, if you've gotten your hair dyed over 25, 30 years, will it come to a stage where you won't be able to get it dyed anymore?
Possibly. Yes, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, this is something I think for hairdressers and for people who get their hair dyed, it's something you can develop. It's not something sometimes going in, it's not the fault of anyone. It's just something you've developed.
It's the fault if they haven't done a patch test. So you have to be careful. And as a stylist watching this, and I don't colour hair, by the way, but I treat the allergies afterwards, right? But as a salon, you have to protect your business. You have to make sure that you're patch testing people. People will bring you to court if there's an allergic reaction, they haven't got a patch test. So be really careful.
I'd be like you. I'd be the one I'd gone in. Like, sure, I got it done the last time. There's no harm.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was grand.
But it is something that I just don't think that we're aware of, that this can happen, because it's this one ingredient that has happened.
I like that you can be sensitive to loads of the ingredients within it, you know. So like that, you might have an allergic reaction, but you might need to switch colour brands a little bit to find out which suits you best.
Okay.
But if you have an allergic reaction, don't put colour near yourself again.
All right. Okay.
Now, let's talk about these.
Yes.
So you're doing it at home.
Do they contain the same thing?
Yeah, they contain PPD as well. The best practice is, right, that you buy one of these kits for home and you do a patch test. You throw the entire thing out because you've now let the oxygen in. So it's now you can't use it. So you throw it out. You have to buy exactly the same one again and then colour your hair the next day. I don't know anyone who's ever done that.
No.
Okay? But you can still have a severe allergic reaction, as we saw there, with the home colour. And I think home colours are becoming more and more popular because it's expensive. Like, colouring your hair in a salon is a luxury, you know? So
But can I ask you, maybe this is a stupid question. So if you open it to do a patch test, it's gone off.
It's gone, you know?
It's oxidised.
So
But why can't they give you a little sample to do the patch test with?
I know. I can't understand why they don't do that to protect people. But really the difference between this and a hair salon colour, there's a little bit of difference. You know, there's a bit more of luxury with the hair salon colour, okay? There's a little bit more PPD in the hair salon colour.
Yeah, but why if I've used this, if I've used a home dye, which I have done many times throughout my life, does a hairdresser, my hairdresser, any hairdresser look at you like you've kicked them in the stomach, punched them in the face and you've ruined their entire life? Like, why is it such a big deal?
Because you're not a professional. So when you apply the colour, we only see our roots, we only see around here. We don't see the back of our head, like it's none of our business. So when you put that on, you're like, I'll just lash it back there. And you're doing it completely uneven and you can't see what you're doing. So then when you come into the salon, your roots are like this at the back, like this at the front, so that you can get loads of issues with colour then. So that's why they don't like them, but it's the application rather than the product.
But you know what? There's so many people watching this morning who will still want to do this because they can't afford the hundreds of quid in a hair salon. Can we ask about lemons here? I have been doing this for umpteen years, putting lemon in my hair. Is it good for me?
You're going to get less of a reaction than you will out of it because it's a natural product. But you do have to be careful because if you put anything acidic on your skin, so when you're rubbing
See, I wouldn't be doing it like this.
Yes.
What I do is I put the lemon, squeeze lemon into a glass, put my head over the sink and just do the tips of my hair.
Why is
that wouldn't be? I wouldn't be putting it onto my scalp like that.
Yeah, that could, because you could kind of create a burn on the scalp.
Yeah,
and the skin,
that's what I would think. That the lemon would burn in the sun.
It could do, and like I was telling you just before, like you could stick it in, you could squeeze it into a spray bottle. That's probably a little bit easier and be more, like, you know. But the natural world is fantastic. Like we've been using natural products since, you know, the dawn of time to colour hair, all that kind of stuff. But just again, be careful of it. All of them have risks. Again, you're not a professional, so it won't look like it does when you leave Dylan Bradshaw's, you know, that kind of way.
Or any of the good salons. Plenty of them around the country. We love Dylan, but there's plenty of them around the country.
As always, Claire Fulham, pleasure to have you. Claire obviously works, people can find you on True Hair.
Yes.
True Hair for more advice there. Thank you so much, as always. Thank you. Coming up in the final hour of Ireland AM, our book reviewer, Ciara King, will be joining us.
Yes, and Deric will be trying his hand at blacksmithing in, what's it called?
Craggaunowen.
What she said.
In Clare. And Alan's going to be going Goth. We'll talk to you in a minute on Ireland AM.
There we are. Yes, it's in the news we've all been waiting for. We have A confirmed Oasis reunion is on the horizon with 2 dates in Crow. Wasn't too sure when the music was going to come in or how it was going to work.
Such a good lip sync there. It was going to be your moment.
People, there's a lot of tribute bands out there, but the real deal are back. Oasis are going to be back next August, and I, for one, am buzzing.
He is certainly buzzing. There's a picture now online of the two of them as they are now, but was it taken in the same room or was it actually superimposed? Joining us with all the news is Today FM's Ed Smith. Good morning, Ed. How are you doing?
Yeah, all right, lads, what's going on? Hey!
It's almost as if you're prepped for this.
Are you excited, Ed?
I haven't heard the news. What's happening? I just happen to be dressed like this normally. Yes, Oasis. Who would have thought it? I'd say the negotiations that went into this, lads, would put the Good Friday Agreement into the halfpenny place. It has finally happened. The biggest will they, won't they in musical history has been answered. The boys are back.
The boys are back, because who would have thought it? Like, there have been times, of course, was it the Manchester bombing that went on as well? There was a lot of speculation that they might have come back for that. They didn't. There's been so much hatred between them over the last couple of years. Has there just been a rekindling? Or have they become friends again? Or is this just an opportunity to cash in?
It's impossible to know. People have always had these suspicions that it was all kind of slightly cartoonish and put on this, but I really feel that the disdain and hatred between them was real.
Yeah.
Like, as only two brothers that were that close, the only kind of, this really kind of familial awfulness to that kind of fallout, I have to say. But I suppose things, money, let's be honest about it, money would have played a part. I think as time goes on, as you get older, you might mellow a little bit. There would have been some communication in the background. But they've played on it for so long now. I think it's a great thing for music. It's a great thing for Oasis fans. And look, 14 dates. I've been looking at the dates here. There is a little breathing room, I think, for a couple of more dates in Croke Park. There's only got the two, 16th and 17th, which is a Saturday and Sunday. Tickets go on sale, of course. Ticketmaster this Saturday at 8 a.m. But just looking at all the dates, the 14th, so they start on the 4th, finish on the 17th. There's a lot of breathing space either side of that for more dates. So I wouldn't be too panicked if at 8 a.m. this Saturday you don't get your tickets. But it's incredible. I have to say this as well. Oasis fans can thank me for this, because on my radio show Today FM Rocks last week, I said it was never going to happen.
You're putting it out into the universe,
I just said, someone asked me, I said, what do you think of Oasis? Nah, forget about it. Give up. It's never going to happen. And Oasis must have been listening, because they went, I'm not having that.
Yeah. And I think when people talk about
the
the pantomime nature, when you think of their mum, Peggy, and she's like, I'd love them to be friends again. I mean, it was definitely real. But can I ask you, we're looking a lot at Liam and Noel. Oasis were a band. Are the five of them getting back together?
No.
Bonehead said he'd never get back with them again.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think some of Noel's backing band in the High Flying Birds were in Oasis back in the day. But if you're talking about the original Oasis formation from 93, 94, that isn't going to happen. But there are members of one of the later incarnations of Oasis. So I think it's going to be Noel's High Flying Birds are going to be to make up the backing band for Oasis. But look, no disrespect to the lads, but it is about Noel and Liam sharing the stage together and sharing the microphone and sharing the limelight once again. I never thought it was ever going to happen. And it's just the boost this needs. And there's a nice symmetry to this as well, because it's 15 years ago since they last performed and 30 since the release of Definitely Maybe. So there's a kind of a poetic timing to this as well. So 2025, that is actually going to be one of the gig events of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised there's going to be definitely maybe more than 14 gigs that they've lined up.
Do you think, what do you think interest levels are going to be like? Are they going to be off the charts? Huge. Taylor Swift, Coldplay, bigger? Because
Garth Brooks.
It looks in the studio, there's a number of people here, and there's a lot are like, nah, wouldn't pay to go and see them, where there's a couple of us are buzzing to go. What do you reckon?
Listen, if it's men and women of a certain age, it's our Taylor Swift now. You know, so I think I was just chatting to somebody there in MCD, and someone was asking, why are they going on sale in Ireland at 8 a.m. and then 9 a.m. in England? They are expecting the demand to be such that they're trying to take the heat and pressure off the Ticketmaster system by letting us go first. Wow. Let the Irish in the gate first at 8 a.m. and then the rest then can buy theirs at 9. It's going to be insanity. Now, again, the 14 dates will sell out in minutes. I will again, I made a great prediction last week to say that they're never getting back together. So I'll say this with advisement that I do imagine there's going to be more dates announced further down the line. Will they do a European tour? Maybe.
5 dates. Monaghan, you were told to turn the lights off when you went to Garth Brooks. I assume it's going to be the same in Mayo. Turn the lights off. We're all going to be in
Charlestown is, I'd say now, they're painting over Joe Biden's mural in Ballina as we speak.
Peggy's up on the mural. Peggy's on the mural. So this is happening.
Peggy's on the mural.
Tickets on sale 31st of August. Make sure you tune in to Ed for if you want things to, if you're manifesting something, get Ed to say the opposite and it might happen for you.
Spurs are going to win the league.
Oh, wow. Now he's going to say it.
Ed Smith.
I'm having it. I'm having it.
Ed Smith Today FM, thank you so much.
Fair play. Going to be supersonic, as they say. Now, coming up next, we are going to be discussing all things books. We're going to be discussing the Ireland End Book Club after this short break.
We have to talk about books, but we have been talking about Oasis for the last 3 minutes with Ciara. But let's get back to the business at hand. From a wartime read to a detective thriller, there's plenty of books to keep you entertained this month.
Yes, here with some of her recommendations is book reviewer Ciara King. Good morning
Hello.
to you, Ciara. OK, let's start talking books. Heart, Be at Peace, Donal Ryan. So, new book from him.
Now, The Spinning Heart obviously came out a couple of years ago, and that was his debut novel, and it was absolutely stunning. And it was set small town Tipperary and just the destruction of the recession around particular characters. So this is a companion, you could call it a sequel to The Spinning Heart. It features a lot of the same voices and characters. There's over 21 in Heart, Be at Peace. And it revisits the town, which has financially kind of restored after what happened to the recession. But there's other issues in the town, such as the influx of drugs into this small community.
The Spinning Heart really put Donal Ryan on the map. I mean, he was longlisted for the Booker Prize. He won Newcomers. He was everywhere in the world for that because of how good he is at characters and taking a small town and making it global. Like it was, this was a global book about the recession globally.
So I was chatting to someone about this and I was like, I just love when I read a Donal Ryan book because it feels like he's talking to me because I'm from rural Connemara. And, he, you know, and a lot of it is set in Tipperary or whatnot. But he just nails that rural voice, but he also nails the human condition. But then I was chatting to a friend of mine from South Dublin and she was like, yeah, but he also nails it for me as well. And it's not just a rural thing. As you said, he's made it possible for that voice to go worldwide.
So
but there's 21 voices,
There is 21 voices and each chapter is like a different story and they're all kind of interconnected and there's clues along the way of how the book is going to end. But for me, I was just so obsessed with the prose and how beautifully written this book is that I didn't see the ending coming when it did come. And with Donal Ryan, I just found myself rereading sentences or a line or some dialogue that he put together. And again, just kind of sitting there going, God, that was gorgeous. Oh, God, that's beautiful. Absolutely loved this book. You're going to have a favourite out of the couple of chapters. I've got two. One is the chapter surrounding Lily the Witch. And another, and I cannot think of her name right now, because all the chapters, obviously the name of the character. And it's about a woman who's robbed in her house at night and how she goes about trying to get back something really valuable that was stolen from her. Like, I was crying reading that chapter. It's stunning. I don't need to tell you how brilliant Donal Ryan is. But I think he's one of Ireland's greatest writers, and I loved this book.
And from this, with the stories that it is with small town, it is issues that we're grappling with today. So he has, much like he has done, like he did, he's done books in relation to Syrian refugees. You know, he's done things from the perspective of the travelling community. Again, he's looking at small town issues. So with them all being interconnected, can you see like small town at play?
Absolutely, but a modern day 2024 version of small town Ireland. No, it's not at all. It's actually really real. It's emotional, it's sad, but also he manages to make it a little bit hopeful as well.
Okay, very good.
I'm assuming he's going to be on the long list for every prize again this year.
Well, I mean, the book is beautiful. I wish I had a different word to describe it, but I'm not Donal Ryan.
Is it as good as The Spinning Heart then?
I read The Spinning Heart about 15 years, or whenever it came out. Maybe it was about 10 years ago.
Now, what do you think?
I loved this one, Heart. I even love the name of the title of the book, Heart, Be at Peace. It's poetry.
Very nice. There you have it. Heart, Be at Peace by Donal Ryan. Let's move on to the next one. Meet Me at Rainbow Corner.
Yes, so it's London. It's 1944. There's bombs dropping. People are going into air raid shelters to take cover. It's World War II, Ireland, England and Germany are at war, and there doesn't seem to be any end to it. There's American GIs walking all around the place. We've got two characters, that Dot and Lily, and they meet up in London. And that's where the whole premise of Meet Me at Rainbow Corner comes from.
And this is written by Celia Imrie, who is a prolific actress. A lot of us will know from Calendar Girls, that sort of a thing.
She's one of those names where I didn't know who she was, and then I saw a picture of her, and Bridget Jones, and as you said, Calendar Girls, and all the big kind of English movies. Yeah, she has appeared in, but she's also an author as well.
So Rainbow Corner, though, it's an oasis in London. So obviously the war is going on, but Rainbow Corner is somewhere to kind of get away from it. Is it?
It's the American Red Cross base it was called Rainbow Corner, and that's actually true. So a lot of this is historically accurate. There was a place called Rainbow Corner, which was the American Red Flag.
The restaurants and cafes, boxing matches,
and it's where they all went
movies.
to dance. It's where the GIs and the nurses and everyone that was kind of in London went to dance, went to socialise, and it was kind of like the hub of society in that particular time in London in 1944 during World War II.
And we've seen people like Anton Dubek as well, like celebrities kind of focus in on this sort of a time period for their books because there's this sort of nostalgia. There's
nostalgia, but there's so much information out there about that particular time as well. I think there is, as you said, a nostalgia. There's also kind of like a romantic view of the war. I don't know how many books that I've read that have been set in Paris or Poland or London in World War II. You know,
one of the historical.
But it's less like Sebastian Faulks, you know, or Birdsong or anything like that. It is more about the lighter side of it.
It is. It's got like that war intrigue. It's got friendship. It's got romance. It's got missing your fiance who's off fighting. You know, the will they won't they get back together, and then there's some espionage thrown in as well, which kind of throws the cat among the pigeons.
Oh, there we go, bit of Charlotte Gray. Yeah. So she's released several books over the years.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't her first throw of the dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's kind of well known. She can do this.
Yeah,
this
and
sort
it's
of thing.
really, when you're reading the book, you just know how well researched it is. She knows her stuff.
Do you like it?
I read it after I read Heart Be at Peace and I Will Ruin You, and I've read so many of those. I love a historical novel. I love a novel set in the war, but I've read them and I've read better ones. I don't
it's like
think
reading a rugby autobiography. They all kind of say the same thing, don't they?
It's
Tommy's is coming out this Christmas.
I'll review that.
No, you don't know.
Tommy, this didn't happen on this date. You know that.
Very good. Okay, right. So that is Meet Me at Rainbow Corner.
Sorry, if you love historical novels that are set in the war, you're going to love this.
Very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Final book is I Will Ruin You.
What a title.
Hey.
I was like, where are we going with this book?
Yeah.
It's a psychological thriller, and I haven't read a book in a really long time, bar Donal Ryan's Heart Be at Peace, which has literally sucked me in the first paragraph. Okay. This is about a teacher called Richard who looks out his window and he's in the middle of teaching an English class, and he sees a former student walking towards the school strapped in dynamite.
Oh my goodness.
And that was literally the first paragraph. So I was like, oh my God, we're straight in here, no faffing about, And the whole book then is the consequence of this teacher's heroic act and how it actually begins to potentially ruin his life.
So the teacher talked the former people down?
Well, I don't want to really spoil it for you guys, but I mean, it's...
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. The act of this teacher kind of ends up unravelling his life because people come out of the woodwork when they see him on television and they decide to completely mess with his life.
This is so interesting because it would have happened with some of those teachers and the mom in America outside that school shooting who were like, the guards wouldn't go in and they started running into the school to try to help the kids.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's taking some real life.
Yeah, but this is like the perfect ingredient of a thriller because every chapter something new is revealed and you just want to read the second chapter. I flew through this book.
Really?
Yeah, I flew through this book. There's a lot of kind of different plots going on, but they're all...
Me.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to read.
It is easy to read. And you keep on guessing. You have to keep on guessing right until the final chapter. Now, I did kind of get an inkling about one particular character, and I was right about it towards the end, but it was very cleverly done.
Linwood Bartley is a global best-selling author for his detective series. Yeah. So is this along the same sort of lines?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As I said, he knows the right ingredients to put into a psychological thriller to keep you reading right to the end.
I Will Ruin You, Linwood Bartley. Are you taking notes now? Are you going to go back to a few of the chapters in your rugby book?
Okay. I ain't doing a rugby book. I'm doing Ireland Dale. And tell all. Watch out.
We come to work and eat food. The end.
There's much more. Gripping right to the end.
Pete, the cameraman, gives out to us for not sitting down at time.
Okay, very good. Well, I will ruin you. Despite the title, that's got my backing anyway.
Yeah,
I
no,
thought
it's
you just
brilliant.
said, I will ruin you.
I will ruin you. Yeah, it's a pretty
thank you.
aggressive title, but anyway.
Ciara King, who was up on Rising Time this morning, fair play for coming into us. Thank you so much.
Can we talk about Oasis now again?
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, we'll
So
do that.
excited, aren't we? Yeah, can't wait for that. Thank you very much, Ciara.
Thanks, guys.
You're very welcome back. Now, Deric has travelled back in time this morning in County Clare and is immersing himself in a real-life history lesson. Deric, take it away.
Thank you very much, team. Welcome down here to the beautiful Bronze Age site. We're down here in Craggaunowen in East Clare. Pauline, I'm loving the regalia. I'm loving the outfit.
Good morning, Deric. So we had to kit you out. When you come to Craggaunowen, you have to be kitted out.
And do you know what the thing about it, Pauline, is that I have not been here since my school tour when I was 6. So it's great to be down here, you know, as an adult, I suppose.
Of course it is. And, you know, you're like many visitor that comes through to us here every day. They come back with the next generation and may not have been here in between. And I think Craggaunowen would have always left a memory in them that they always want to come back.
Now, tell us about the historic site here, Sev, because it dates back to the Bronze Age, so millennia, really.
Well, I suppose the castle was the primary setting here. The castle was built in 1550 and John Hunt bought the castle in 1960, setting out to restore it. John Hunt was an art collector and he was also an archaeologist, and he was looking for a place to store his museum collection. So he bought the castle in 1960. He had been in Lochgore and had excavated Lochgore, so he had known what a Bronze Age crannog was like. So then John Hunt had this vision of having an open-air museum where people could come and visit and see how our ancestors lived and survived in Ireland long ago.
And speaking of that, it was the McNamaras, in fact, that built the castle back in the 16th century.
It was. John McShea the McNamara built the castle here in 1550. He would have been a descendant of the McNamara who built the Poe Castle over the road.
From there, then, we move on to the Crannogs, and we were there earlier on. Of course, an artificial man-made island. It was used for not only housing, but also for protection as well.
Yes, you're going back to Bronze Age for the Crannog, so you're talking about 1,000 years BC. And yes, it was used for protection. And we walked onto the Crannog by a bridge, and normally that wouldn't have been the normal route to go. It could have been a secret passage or a tunnel under the surface of the water, and that was more for protection.
Made from the willow, but also it's the wattle and daub method, that old style method to make them.
Yes, I suppose the hazel would have been used for the walls. They were woven walls with hazel because it's a pliable tree, and then the outside of the walls were plastered with a plaster called daub, and daub is a mixture of clay and either animal hair or maybe human hair.
Plenty of it.
Plenty of it. Mixed together and pasted on the outside. So that's where we get the wattle and daub from.
All right, Pauline, we'll come back to you in a few moments' time because we're going to walk and talk over here. And we're going to say good morning to Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hello, how are you doing?
Yeah, Jack, tell us what you're doing here this morning.
Yeah, so I'm turning this small piece of apple wood into a bowl. The lathe that I'm using is called a pole lathe. And I'm using a small hook gouge there to do the hollow form shaping. The thing is, this is what most people probably ate off of most of human history in Europe anyway. And yeah, wood was much more affordable than ceramic.
Let's see it in action here, Jack.
Right, so here we go. So I'm pedaling with the foot. There's a rope wrapped around the mandrel, and the pole springs it back up again. So it's a treadle-powered lathe with a return spring from pole return spring. And then I can bring the tool into contact with the timber surface only on the downstroke. You can hear that in the rhythm it's making. And then it will slice away material, leaving a nice clean finish behind. I don't need any sanding for this.
And we have all your finished products here beside us, which are absolutely gorgeous. And of course, you travel around the country to different fairs and markets.
Yeah, that's right. You can find me at living.longbows on Instagram. And you can. I do this as a mobile display as well. Yeah.
Yeah, great. All right, Jack. Thank you so much for chatting to us. Now we're going to pick up Pauline once again over here. Pauline, will you tell me, in fact, and tell the viewers at home, what in fact is a Fullacht Fia?
Folacht Fia is an Iron Age cooking site.
Yes.
And we have a pit, a hole or a pit, and that's lined with rocks and stones. At the side of the pit, we have a large fire. Inside in the fire, the stones are heated and they're rolled down into the pit, and that's what boils the water. The water's in the pit, so the hot stones boil the water. We wrap the meat in sugan, which is a straw rope.
Straw rope,
That's
okay.
like, you know, a 10 file almost today. And we boil the meat and
in underground then?
All underground. And we actually had the Folacht Fia lit here on Saturday, and we did a dry pit instead of the water, heating the water, and the meat was absolutely delicious.
Oh, great. Now, we're going to pop over here finally, and we have our blacksmith on site. Tell us what you're doing here this morning.
Well, I'm just knocking together one of the more common items I'd make here at Craggaunowen, which we call the Craggaunowen leaf. And the idea being that I'll forge up little iron leaves here in a Viking period.
These are the bellows here beside you, right?
Indeed, yeah, these are the bellows. They'll feed the air to the fire and allow my little barbecue here to get a piece of steel somewhere up to around about 1,000 degrees centigrade.
1,000 degrees. And of course, this is how they used to make their weapons before, right? Fado.
Absolutely everything was made like this by the blacksmith. Blacksmith is predominantly a tool maker more than he's anything else. Now, sometimes I'm making tools for myself. Sometimes I'm making tools for our wood turners, our wood carvers, our basket makers. Sometimes I'm making tools for warriors.
And obviously an incredible skill, an incredible craft to have back in the day, and obviously still alive and kicking.
Always alive and kicking as it can be in this day and age.
All right, thank you so much for joining us here. Of course, you can check out more at Craggaunowen.ie for more information from me and all the crew down here in East County Clare this morning. A big wave for Pauline and all the gang. Jack, back to you guys in studio in Dublin.
Thank you very much, Deric. Now, coming up next, we are going to meet the Goth couple who have amassed a huge following on TikTok. We've got the candles lit, and they have, I believe it's pretty impressive, transformed Alan Hughes into a Goth. You don't want to miss it. That's coming up after the break. You're very welcome back. Now, our next guests have made a name for themselves online, quite the name for themselves online, with their content online as members of the Goth community. Please welcome Goths and content creators, Conor and Lynn. Good morning to you both. Great to have you with. You're looking fantastic this morning. Now, I am missing a co-presenter. I know he's been in your hands for the last little while. Any sign of Alan Hughes?
What do you think?
Love the hand gesture, Al.
Yeah, do you like it?
Conor, Lynn, what do you reckon? He make a good...
100%.
Looks incredible, honestly.
There we go.
Right, Alan, get over here. You go take your seat. So before we have a chat with Conor and Lynn, let's take a look at some of their most popular videos online.
We decided that the first video we're going to do is going to be a makeup video.
So we're going to get started right now with a Goth makeup tutorial. Okay, that is our finished looks. I'm not going to lie, I really like this.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to stay like this instead.
Stay like this?
Yeah.
Cool. Goth ice cream. It's actually really good. It's actually really good ice cream. So, what do you guys think? These are our finished products. Kind of impressed with how mine came out. All things considered, he's a little terrible. You better not start carrying this thing around the house and using it to speak to me.
I don't speak now, only the doll.
Only the doll speaks.
There you have. He looks like one of the dolls, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Conor and Lynn, are also known as the Random Goth Couple on social media and YouTube as well. I mean, Lynn, you have got over like 1.7 million views, I think, on your TikTok account. When did you start getting into Gothic culture?
I think from the age of 9 or 10 years old, I started to get into, well, I really loved Halloween, but then that turned into me liking metal music and stuff like that. But then I found Evanescence, and she inspired me to dress Gothic. So I started really early. My parents thought it was a phase that I just never got over. So at first they didn't really like me to do it, But now they're very accepting.
Because you went to a Catholic school and everything like that.
I did,
So I
I
could
went to a
imagine
Catholic
you
school.
arriving in and the nuns going, what's going on here?
There was like 4 or 5 Gothic people maybe in my year, and whenever we came in, it was always those 5 that would be sent outside. Go to the bathroom, take your makeup off. I'd try and wear hoodies and everything, whatever I could do, bracelets, but they would always catch us.
Are there a lot of misconceptions around Goths and the Gothic culture?
Definitely, I think so. It is getting better, I think, in recent years, because with TikTok and just online, you can absorb so much more information about things that maybe wouldn't have been as easily accessible before. But I think there are still a few sort of stereotypes that persevere regardless, which is kind of like, oh, all Goths are depressed or they all worship the devil and things like that. But I think society
And it's the type
as a
of
whole,
music and stuff that you like, and it's just perceived that you are all these, oh, you know, like, you know.
But so it isn't about worshipping Satan, because like you, I think you mentioned like you're Christian or whatever else.
Raised Christian, yeah, love Jesus.
So
big
is it a
fan.
musical thing then, or what is it?
Yeah, so Goth is a music-based subculture that was kind of born in the early 80s. It spread off from like the post-punk music genre, and bands like The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, Bauhaus.
Yeah.
They kind of went a more melancholic gothic rock route, and then fans of the subculture, of the music, kind of formed the subculture, and over the years it's become like music and fashion, and now there's probably millions of people around the world.
And Conor, was it you then, was it that kind of music that got you into Goth?
Yeah, well, I think Goth was something I was always like interested in, even from when I was younger, and I matured more into the style and stuff as I got older. When I was growing up, like I had siblings who were teenagers in the 80s, and then a sibling who was a teenager in the 90s, and all of them were very kind of interested in alternative culture of the time. So growing up, I had already got like CDs with The Cure, and then from my other sibling, I had stuff like 9 Inch Nails and like 90s gothic industrial stuff. So it always kind of appealed to me, even from a young age.
Hey, so you are the random Goth couple online. You've been going out with each other, is it 12 years? How did you meet?
12 years,
We just celebrated. Yeah, we just celebrated our 12-year anniversary.
How did you meet?
We actually met at a petrol station. we were hanging out with another bunch of Goths, and we all kind of
It's just somewhere that they hung out. Could have been anywhere.
At the petrol station, I don't know why. It's just, you know, you could go into the shop and buy what you wanted, and there was a shed back there. And,
what's the Gothic scene like in Ireland then?
Are there clubs? Like, do you just meet up? Are there nights out, cafes you go to?
So walking around, you might not think there's actually that many Goths. But once there's a night on, they all come out and you say, where have you been hiding?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of Goth nights at the moment. Sometimes they come and go due to popularity.
And would there be an online thing where you can keep in touch? Not really.
Well, just Facebook, Instagram, everything.
Oh, the usual, yeah.
Not really WhatsApp.
I don't think there's a Goth WhatsApp group, no.
If there is a Goth WhatsApp group, please, someone add it.
Hello?
I'm sure they'll find you.
I believe, and we were, as you were doing me up, we were talking about that, the way people perceive you, but also that it's a very open community, and like with the queer community as well, like embracing that, and like people may not be coming out or feeling like they were different. They sort of, you all nearly come together like that.
Definitely. There's a huge correlation between Goth culture and queer culture. I think there's a very strong mutual understanding between us, what it's like to be judged by society or seen as different or unusual. So it's great to have that kind of bond between us.
Yeah, we're just very open-minded for everything.
You have huge following on social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Like TikTok insane as well. Like, what is it about your content that's really made it take off?
You tell me.
Honestly, we're not
The
sure.
Gothic ice cream, maybe, was it?
Ice cream. We went to see Barbie, and it was the contrast between pink and black, I think that was a big one.
Oh, of course, yeah. And you two there sitting there. Did you enjoy Barbie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw it eventually and we enjoyed it.
I saw you did the April Fools though, where you actually dressed up kind of in, I don't know, would that be your day-to-day outfit or completely not day-to-day?
We went to Tesco and bought some outfits, so...
Okay.
Because we have to say, this is not you every day.
No, well, not really. We would wear black, but we wouldn't do a full face of makeup because we'd run out of makeup. So we do just black clothes, a bit of eyeliner sometimes. The hair would be probably like this, and not every day. We wouldn't go all out like this, no.
When would you dress up then? When are the events that you kind of...
Well, going to goth clubs and gigs. There's actually a lot of goth gigs at the moment, which is new for us because in the past there wasn't. Meet up with friends, like if we go to see a horror movie or if we go for a picnic or a walk in the graveyard or stuff like that. We do stuff like that.
In the graveyard?
Glasnevin graveyard, we love it, yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow. So if people are wanting to get involved in it, is a graveyard or a petrol station?
Yeah, yeah, we're trying to organise a meet up for Glasnevin graveyard for a walk.
Okay.
So stuff like that, yeah. You'll find that information.
Listen, thank you so much for the makeover.
No problem.
I think
it looks great. Yeah, fair play to you. Connor and Lynn, and of course, if you want to find them online, it's at Random Goth Couple. And thanks for bringing in all the and the jacket
thank
is
you
really
for this.
cool.
I'm loving this. You might get this back.
Now, coming up on tomorrow's Ireland Day, Minister for European Affairs and Defence, Jennifer Carroll McNeil, TD, is going to be joining us.
And Deric is attending the Women's Irish Open.
Where Myrne is playing.
Yeah, where Myrne is playing. And chatting to former Cork hurler Anthony Nash and Iron golfing legend Leona Maguire. See you tomorrow. Have a great day.
See you tomorrow from 7.
Will I keep it on?
Have a good one.
Yeah, keep it on. There you go. Yeah.
Exactly.